Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Maddie, and if you are not new here, then thank you so much for coming back. It makes me feel super warm and fuzzy inside. Today we are going to be creating characters for my new work in progress, and I am going to be reviewing some reference books as well as going through some characters that I really admire in terms of how they were written and how they accomplished their goals and the differences between want versus need. So I'm just very excited to start diving into it, and if you would also like to come along for this journey, then feel free to continue watching. I love building characters. I think it's one of my favorite parts about writing. Whenever I come up with ideas, it is always protagonist centered and less of a full plot idea that comes to me. I love finding an idea that I want to explore, and the person that gets to explore that idea I think is just one of my biggest drives for writing. However, I definitely have some strengths and weaknesses. I think that internal conflict and struggle is just so much easier for me to write, as well as internal goals, and I think that's because I'm bad at external goals. Even for myself, I'm just much more of like an ideas person, that it's hard to break things down into steps and goals that can actually be measured or accomplished. So that is a definite weakness currently when I write characters. It is so much harder for me to create the arc where they have one goal, and sometimes it was pointed out to me with This Cruel Fate that Zolia acted out of character, or it just didn't make sense for her character. And reading through the notes and what I had written, just like, you are so right. Definitely not where she needed to be or was at in terms of her arc and growth and everything. And I think that definitely stems from not having a strong document to fall back on, and by the end needing to hit plot points to meet my deadlines. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm putting so much more work into this pre-writing process, so that hopefully there's less work to be done during the writing process, because now that it's piling up with This Cruel Fate, like, my mental list is just like adding something every day, even though I'm trying really hard to not think about it. So when I get all my notes back, I can just look at it with like fresh eyes. I definitely want to make sure I have a strong idea as well as a strong written document for my characters for this new project, so that during the drafting and when the drafting part gets hard or I'm struggling, I have something to fall back on. So I'm making sure that my characters are always acting in character and in line with who they are as people, their arcs and where they are in that arc, and that it serves the overall plot and their interactions with other characters. I don't think we should ever fall into the trap of thinking that, oh, well, I've gotten my degree or I have written an entire book, so I can move on from learning and growing. Because I definitely don't think that's true, especially where I am at. I'm still so very like young in the writing industry and that world. So I'm going to be reviewing some reference books. The two books that I'm going to dive back into today is John Truby's The Anatomy of Story. This is my holy grail of writing reference books. I love it so much, and the way he explains things and the examples he gives are always just spot on, and I can totally see what he's trying to say, especially in the examples. Like, some of the times it's like, what trying to think of a character's external and internal goals, and I'm like, I don't know. And then he explains it and it just like clicks in my brain and it makes it easier. The way he explains things, it really makes things click for me, and I can then spot it and figure it out in other works, as well as deciding how to write those into my own characters. So his chapter on characters, chapter 4, so we're going to be diving into that. The other reference book I'm going to be rereading today is Save the Cat Writes a Novel, trying not to have it be glaring on the iPad screen. This is a really big help for outlining. It's very in-depth and again, easy to understand. For Save the Cat, I'm going to be reviewing chapters 6 through 10, and that is institutionalization, which is about like the institutions characters belong to and how that influences their actions. The superhero, so being extraordinary in an ordinary world, dude with a problem, full triumphant, and buddy love. So I'm just gonna be diving into those chapters today and seeing what they have to say. And after that, I want to take some time to think about characters that I really admire in terms of their writing, not necessarily if they are like good people or bad people, but if they are compelling and engaging to read or watch. I always forget how much I love this book. It just, so amazing, and I love what Truby says about characters as a whole, and how oftentimes we can fall into this trap of creating each character that they just exist within the same world rather than coexisting, and that they are all connected and they all serve the purpose of showing the theme and relaying that theme that we have as part of like our premise. I stopped reading this one before getting to the end because some of it is, oopsies, is writing exercises, so I'm going to work on those today. So we're going to start working on these, writing things down, and yeah, just reading through it, my mind is just like ping, 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 coming up with all these ideas. Every time I read this book, I'm just reminded of how much I love it, and I cannot recommend this book enough. But yeah, I think I'm gonna do most of my character creation right now in Scrivener, and then I also have my notebook that I got for this project that I've just been like putting notes in and different things like that. So yeah, that's where we are at now, is actually working on specific characters for this work in progress. And when I think about really well-written characters that have embodied different elements of good character writing, it is also just so much more inspiring. I always think of the first Iron Man movie is such a good example of want versus need. More recently, the new Puss in Boots movie, The Last Wish, such an amazing movie just from all like perspectives, and how each character has a strong desire and they all want the same thing. That is something that is repeated a few times in the anatomy of story, that your protagonist and opponent should want the same thing. They aren't working for two different things because then they are not in direct opposition with another, but they want the same thing, and they are just the person on the other side. They're not necessarily like wanting to cause physical violence or harm. They are just the person on the other side of your protagonist, and The Last Wish perfectly embodies that. With the exception of the little dog, they all want that wish. And it's really incredible because they all go on a character arc and they all have growth. It does serve that purpose where they're all going after the same thing. And then especially with like the archetypes that Truby goes over, they all fall into different archetypes, and then they all play off of each other in terms of whether they are opposing one another or an ally or a fake opponent ally, fake ally opponent, just the different roles that they have to fill, they each fill and they embody without falling into like stereotypes. So that was like a really amazing movie and really amazing to learn. And especially when I was like still in college and first reading through this book, one of the biggest things that even if I think back to now, when I have to remind myself about good character goals, when, you know, I do fall into that trap of going internal and trying to stay internal and needing to do external goal creation, is watching like middle grade TV shows. I love SpongeBob. I loved it as a child. I loved it as a teenager. I loved it as an adult. And I could like quote from any episode, any situation in my life. I can find a SpongeBob quote that is applicable. But one of the nice things about it is that it is really easy to see that the characters' internal motivations and goals always correlates to an external goal. For example, like Mr. Krabs, you know he wants money, but you can't really measure how much money is enough, but what you can measure is that he wants money, so he's going to cut corners and build an incredibly unsafe theme park to get all the children's parents' monies during spring break. So that is like an external goal he has, to build a park and get all the children's money. And then you can count that, and that is a measurable goal. Another good one, I love Regular Show, and I think again, it very clearly has a strong cast of characters that each fulfill a clearly defined role, and they have clearly defined goals. And yeah, so I think sometimes stepping back from newer genre or just adult stories, because sometimes you just have to see it like in your face, no subtlety, just to learn it and absorb it, and then you can start to pinpoint it in more complex stories, as well as turning it into a complex story for yourself. So I'm just popping in for a quick intermission of character building because I'm going to go on a little mini adventure to a free little library. So I have some books that I want to take to the little library. The first one is Devil House. I got this one from Barnes & Noble, and it was very interesting, not what I was expecting from reading the little flap. So I'm gonna drop this off at the free little library, and hopefully someone enjoys it and it has a good home. The second one is the Atlas 6. I really wanted to like this one. I did not. Someone else will enjoy it so much more than me. So I'll be taking this to the little library as well. And the final book drop off for today is Final Girls by Riley Sager. And I thought this book was fine, you know, not like special. I had some criticisms, and then I learned that Riley Sager is a man. I thought that he was a woman, and that exacerbated all the issues I had with it. So I do not like this book. So I'm gonna drop this off, and hopefully someone else enjoys it more than I did. The free little library is about a mile away from my house, and I decided to take my dog Riley along for the walk, and he did pretty okay for the walk to the library. And we did have to take a few breaks so he could roll around in the grass and whatnot, but that was fine because it was such a beautiful day. I made it to the library, dropped off my books. I didn't see any that were really catching my eye, so I didn't take any. And then on the way back, Riley was really struggling. He is getting to be a middle-aged man, which makes me so sad. Walking, he did not really want to do. So I had to put him in the tote bag I used to take the books to the library, which thank God I used a bag to carry them. He had the time of his life. So all in all, it was a good little morning adventure. As of right now, I have 14 characters for this work in progress. They are not all main characters, but they are characters that influence the plot in a fairly significant way. So I just wanted to make sure I had at least the basics down For the main players, I have their names, ages, just that kind of basic, like a physical description. And then I also identified their archetypes as explained by John Truby in The Anatomy of Story. And then I also identified their purpose, whether they are the hero or an opponent or some variation of an opponent or an ally. If they are just an ally, anything like that, I have identified. I have given them their goals, and the internal goals I am pretty solid on. The external goals, I am pretty happy with where I'm at. However, as I outline and fill in the details, those external goals may change just depending on the direction of the conflict. And then I also wrote down the background for my major characters as well. I feel like I'm so much more prepared to outline, and that I'm just going to be more informed when making decisions for plot beats and where they should fall, where one opponent should be taking like the main conflict and others should fall back. So yeah, I am just really excited. I think I have a really good start, and that wraps up the character building portion of the outlining creation vlog session for this new work in progress. And the next 2 weeks are going to be spent filling out the outline and starting draft 0, which is just going to be a discovery draft that I'm going to write on my free write. And I am so super appreciative if you have made it to this point in the video. I would be so happy if you dropped a like, hit subscribe, tell me about how you build characters or some of your favorite characters in either books or movies, TV shows, and why they're your favorite characters, because I'm sure there's a reason, even if they aren't very good people. I have Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman on my shirt, and as we all know, he was not a good person, but a very compelling character. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts about character building and character arcs down below. And I will see you next Friday as we start outlining and building the work in progress. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.